LSU dropped down one spot to number 2 in the latest college football playoff rankings that were published on Tuesday night. Ohio State jumped the Tigers. Now LSU 2, Ohio State 1, Clemson 3, Georgia 4, Alabama 5, Utah 6. Here is Kirk Herbstreit of ESPN giving his initial reaction.
Well, I think that as far as the committee's eyes, just before I get to that, I would just say that I think it has as much to do with what we just talked about. The respect that they've had all along for Penn State is why I think this week instead of next week or last week, I think it has to do with they look at Penn State as a very, very good football team, and the fact that they fought Ohio State, while some seem to think, wow, that Ohio State didn't look as dominant as they're supposed to. I think maybe the committee looked at that and saying, hey, that's a pretty good football team that they beat. Meanwhile, LSU's been, not playing. They played Ole Miss and Arkansas last week, and I think the biggest thing is that the defense from LSU, I think, opens the door a little bit to look at Ohio State as a more complete team from September to last week, offensively and defensively. I think that's what the committee must have seen.
Rob Mullens, who's the College Football Playoff Committee's president this year, talks about Ohio State's leap.
Well, Ohio State's been a complete team, and that win over Penn State was their third win against teams that we currently have ranked in the top 19. And it's probably that complete team piece. Ohio State's been really good on both sides of the ball.
That's interesting. LSU has 3 wins in the top 15 and 2 in the top 11. Huh? How about it? 1 on the road, 2 against the 5th team in the country. But, yeah, whatever.
LSU passing game coordinator Joe Brady has been named one of 15 semifinalists for the 2019 Broyles Award. That goes to the top assistant coach in college football. Brady, who's in his first year with the Tigers, is one of only 3 SEC assistants on the list. He joined former LSU and now current Auburn defensive coordinator Kevin Steele and Georgia defensive coordinator Dan Lanning on the list. Brady's the only coach on the semifinalists with a title other than offensive or defensive coordinator, and he's going to win it. New Orleans Saints, they visited.
You think he will win it?
Yes. If he does it, what are you looking for in the? What are the qualifications for
the
award?
I was just thinking maybe because since Steve is still technically, he's a passing game coordinator versus, Ensminger being the offensive coordinator calling the play. So I didn't know if maybe that would come into play. But certainly Joe Brady's been talked about more than any assistant that I've heard this year.
New Orleans Saints visit the Atlanta Falcons on Thursday night with a chance to lock up the NFC South. Former off-the-bench intern and current reserve offensive lineman Will Clapp returned to Saints practice on Tuesday. Sean Payton was on a conference call Tuesday talking about the Atlanta game.
I think the scheme comes up, what we didn't do well, what they did well, what we have to change. It's part of the cut-up of this season that we're looking at, and certainly our game means something because it's how they defended you or how they attacked you, and I think it's part of what goes into your plan.
Saints and Falcons, Thanksgiving night. New Orleans Pelicans host the Los Angeles Lakers tonight in the first meeting against former star Anthony Davis. Here's why Ramona Shelburne, I think, needs to come on local radio and explain the comments that she made yesterday in Los Angeles Afternoon Drive, going back to when Anthony Davis was on the trade block.
So you think there's a racial element?
Yeah, I do. I think if you were close to that situation, I think part of the reason why New Orleans didn't want to trade him for so long.
Yeah.
And one, I knew they obviously couldn't get fair value for him.
Right.
But I think the idea that a black agent was telling the team, you should trade him.
Wow.
And that he wasn't going to stay, did not go over very well.
I had not thought of it that way.
In New Orleans.
Wow.
Especially with that, I don't want to say that fan base, but you're down in the South, man. It was this was very charged. And I think that when things get ugly emotionally like that, it's not just about what's going on the court. It's not just about the moves that are being made.
So New Orleans didn't want to trade Anthony Davis because a black agent wanted to trade him. It's not because he was their best hope at winning any games and one of the best players in the NBA. It's not because, as she says at the beginning of that ignorant statement, and she says, well, also they're trying to get fair value out of him. Hello, exactly, Ramona. They were trying to get fair market value. out of him. When you have to give up a top 5 player in the NBA, you want to try to maximize the return on that. This is absurd. And as people like Jake Madison, Sean Fazan, many others have pointed out Sean Kelly, many others have pointed out online, like, this takes away from actual racial incidences and like actual racism. Like, this is pathetic. It's ignorant. It's frustrating. It just feels it feels like an injustice. And the worst part about it is she will probably never address it again. She's going to make this offhand this offhand paint with a broad brush comment, and then she's just going to go on while everybody out there that listens thinks, yo, man, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The South and the Pelicans must be racist.
I have the quote tweeted at Ramona Shelburne. I'm telling you, OTB Army, this is how we got Dick Vitale on the radio, was by going at him on social media and stomping our feet about, come explain yourself. Ramona Shelburne.
People were mad because he held the franchise hostage. He forced his way out of New Orleans. Newsflash, if you are a fan of a professional team and an athlete once, basically says, I dislike y'all to the point where I am willing to do whatever it takes, including basically sinking the franchise in order to get out of here, of course that's going to engender some bad feelings. It's just absurd to think so, that it wouldn't.
On to a more refreshing story. It's not even Thanksgiving yet, and number 1 in college basketball has been upset twice. Stephen F. Austin did it last night as they got number 1 Duke 85-83 on a layup at the buzzer by Nathan Bain. This is what it sounded like on Stephen F. Austin radio last night from Cameron Indoor.
Mills got it. They've got a timeout. They don't use it. Bain! Yes! The Lumberjacks have done it! Penn's Mills.
What a win last night
Love
for
it.
Stephen F.
Love
Austin.
it.
It's all happening.
This is the first time that more than number 1 team has lost in November. Duke's loss was the 3rd top-ranked defeat already this season, following Michigan State's loss to Kentucky and the Wildcats' defeat at home to Evansville a couple of weeks back. LSU basketball back on the floor Friday night.